Hi everybody, welcome to the final project for Module 3. It's going to combine everything we learned, which is first was functions playing around with multiple parameters and setting different default values and that kind of thing. And then we looked at input from files and from a actual user. So we're going to combine all of that to make a actually pretty complicated function, but I'm going to walk through it step by step. So let's get through it. If you've not enrolled, please subscribe to the channel. Here we go. So we're going to write the function write_inst_to_file. Output file name and input file name is equal to this empty string. So this function has to have an output file name, sorry about that, has to have an output file name, and it can have an option input file name. By default, it's set equal to the empty string. The function will read contents from either, so it depends, either a file, input file name, so it could be this file, this could be a file name, or if input file name is not specified, as in input file name is the empty string, so that means we just called it with only one parameter here because this is its default, then it will ask the user for input. So if this is a file, if we passed it with a file name, or if we passed with two parameters, the second one would be a file name, we're going to read it from that file. But if it's not, if we only passed it one parameter, that means it's just going to be the empty string, and so we want to get that input from the user. If the user is asked for input, then the program will continue to ask them for input until they input the empty string, nothing. Okay, so it's going to keep asking them. It's going to say, give me some input, give me some input, give me a line, okay, a line of input, until that line is just the empty string, and then it's going to terminate. The program will output only the lines which can be read in as integers into the file output file name. So I want output file name just to be whatever the file you called it is, that's the name of the file. I want it to have just a list of integers, which are the stuff that could be read in from either input, the input from the user, or from the file. So whatever those lines were, if you can read that line in as an integer, then I want it to be part of that output file. Okay. All right, so how do we write this function? So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this for now. So define this function, define write_inst_to_file of output file name, and input file name is going to be just the empty string like that. Okay, now let's just switch this into cases. So it's either if input file name. Now what does this do? I think I've showed it before, but if not, basically if the empty string, that is not going to run. Right here, this is not going to do anything because the empty string evaluates to false in an if, but evaluates to true if there's basically anything else there. If A, B, or even just if space. So what this is saying, this is essentially asking the question, are we reading from file or from input? If there is an input file name, we are assuming that is a proper file, and so we'll just say print, we are reading from the name of the file, that's a string, so this is totally fine, from input file name. Otherwise, what we're doing, and this is not part of the function, this is just for us clarity, print, what are we doing? Well, we are reading from user input, okay? So there's no parameter put there, it's just we're reading from user input. Okay, so let's just show how we would call this function for now. Write_inst_to_file, output file name is say, well, we're assuming it's a real file. Output file name is whatever name that we want to put. Okay, so this thing is say hi.txt. And that's going to be our output file name. Sorry about this, I'm writing random stuff. Hi.txt, and then input file name is say sample1.txt, or if you look over to the left here, I do have some file here for us, which has hey, 1, 2, hi, and the empty string at the end. So at the end, we're going to want to turn this thing from hey, 1, 2, hi into just 1 and then 2, because that is the integers. But for now, I'm going to just show you that this says we're reading from sample1.txt, and if I didn't pass this thing at all, then we are reading from user input. Okay, so that's the if. Now I'm going back to this one, and we're going to deal with this case first. So we are reading from an input file, or we are reading input from a file. Okay, well, we know that we're going to do with open the file name, so input file name in read mode. So we know we're going to do that as f. So now we have the file. For now, let's just print the contents, and you do that with print, and actually I'll make it variable name, file contents as string is equal to f.read, and let's print the file contents as string. And so there you go, so that we have that output, which I will now get rid of. And we have just the file contents, hey12 hi, and I think there is an empty line at the end there. Now, okay, what do we want to do? So we want to let's just put the stuff we do want into a list, which is the integers. Well, for now, let's just get everything into a list. We do that with .split, where we .split. Remember, there's actually a \n there. It doesn't look like it from the output, but there is. If we do that, now it is a list separated by those \n's, or those new lines, and now we have hey12 hi, and there is an empty string there indeed. Okay, so now it's all in a list. We only want the integer stuff. So let's iterate through our list, where we're going to make a new list called only ints is equal to this empty list, and we're going to build this up. So let's say for s, as in string, for s in file contents as string. Okay, so s is one of these strings, and do we want it or do we not? Well, that's based off of whether it is an integer or not. And the only way we know how to do this right now is to possibly break the program, except we can avoid that with try. So if we do this int s thing, this may break the program without a try, except we have a try here. It's going to attempt to do this, where we'll say elem as string, or elem as int, is equal to the int of s. So if this did work, then it was an integer, and so let's append that to our list. Only ints.append elem as int. Okay, but if it's not, if that didn't work, we would go to an except, where, okay, what do we actually want to do in this case? It's just a string, and it's not something we want. Well, then I'm just going to write pass, which basically means just do nothing and carry on to the next one. There's other ways of doing this, but this is very clear in what we're doing. Okay, so try element is int of s, and only ints.append, the element is an integer. So that if we call print on this thing after everything here, we call print on only ints, then we get them as integers. Okay, so notice that we did actually pass this elem as int instead of elem, or, well, s. So they are integers now. Do we really want that? Well, we'll probably end up converting it later, because we are going to be writing to a file, and we write strings to a file, not integers. But this is fine, we can convert that later, or actually we can just do it now, and really all you do is append s, because then that is the string instead of the integer. We know it's an integer though. Okay, so really we're done after this for this case, because we know that we've seen before, you can just loop over the elements here, and then you can put a \n, add all of them, and then you can put that into our file. We could write that very easily. And in fact, let's do it, but move this a little bit, because really, either case what we're going to do the same strategy, where we do this file name, or sorry, only ints is this list. So either way, with the if or the else, either spot, we are going to be making this list of ints. It's only ints. Remember, it's a list of strings now. And that is what we're going to output. So that after the else, which we will do shortly, we can just do for s in only ints. For s in only ints, we want to, we want to write to a file. So we'll do with open of the output file name, Okay, we want to write to this file. And okay, what is mode is it? It's going to be in write mode. And what we will do is for s and only int, then we want to write. So sorry, I need to write as f. So with that, then we can do f.write s. So that's the integer that we want. Except, I don't know what I just did. S plus \n is how we preserve that line thing. All right, so this should work for when we are passing a file. So if we try this, then it's going to still output the same thing because I said to print this, but really we don't want to print this thing at all. If we do that, we are outputting something called to hi.txt. If I refresh this, we see hi.txt and it has 1, 2 in the empty line. That is what we want, okay? And this, whether there's an empty line in there, it's not really a big deal. Most programs don't care one way or the other. Maybe it does, but probably not. Okay, so that was the first case where we're reading from the file. Now we're going to try and read from the input down in here. So we're going to leave what's up there. And instead, I'm going to delete this and try to build up a list for now of just the lines of the person's input. So they input, say, hey, actually, we'll pretend for now that their input is the same as this. So they're going to input hey, then 1, then 2, then hi, then the empty string is in, then they are done. So we want to put that stuff into a list. Well, I can do this by something kind of tricky. So just stick with me here and force this to make sense. I'm going to set imp equal to something kind of stupid, which is just a string that has any contents in it. That's the only point. And now what we can do is while imp, and in here, we're going to get the input. So I'll say imp is equal to, note that I'm overriding imp here, imp is equal to the input from the user. So I'll prompt them, give us a line, please, and \n so it looks pretty. And then that is good for now. Okay, so we have input equal to 1, the string of 1, while imp. What this does is the same kind of behavior as the if, where we're saying if we ask this thing in a while, it says, okay, do you want me to run the loop again or not? Based off of this string. This string, in this sense, evaluates to true if it is not the empty string. So as in, we want to get more input from the user if they gave us anything other than the empty string. But if they did give us the empty string, then what's going to happen is the loop will not run. But it will definitely run the first time because I'm forcing imp to be this string that has content in it. So it's going to go in the loop, and then it'll say imp is equal to this input. We're going to get whatever input it is from the user. If it is the empty string, that means they are done. So it will be done with the loop. But if it is not, then we're going to continue. So firstly, we're going to put this into a list. And so we'll say lines from user. Lines from user is this empty list. And then down here, I will set lines from user dot append. So I'm going to add this to the list. I'm going to add imp to the list. Okay, so whatever input they gave us, it is going to go in there. And in fact, even at the end, when we give them they give us the empty string, that is going to get input into here as well, because, well, this runs if they give us the empty string, they put that in there, and then the while is going to check that, and then it'll be done. So that empty string will be put into the list, but that's totally fine. Okay, so now that we have lines from user built up, well, again, we want to do really the same thing that we did before when we were trying to convert stuff to an int. And we want to put this into only ints. All right, so how do we do that? Well, it's going to be basically the exact same code. If I copy this, and I'll show you how to tweak it just a little bit, I can do that where? Well, here is where we built up sorry, I'm getting confused in the code. Down here is where we built up the list. So outside of the while loop, we want to do this for, and again, it's getting kind of indented too much here. For s in not file contents as string, but lines from user. So for each string in lines from user, try elem as int is the int of s, and only ints dot append of s, and except we want to just do nothing, and then that will have only ints. Again, this list at the top, I know our function's pretty big at this point, that will have only ints as the proper list, but now it'll have it based off of whether, or it doesn't matter whether we got it from input or from a user. If we got it from whether we got it from a file or from the user. If we got it from a file, we'll build up only ints this way or this way. And if we got only ints from the input, then we'll build it up this way. Either way, only ints is now built up the proper way. Okay, so if we call just this, write ints to file, hi.txt, that means we are asking for input and give us a line, okay, hey. Another one, okay, 1. Another one, okay, 2. Another one, okay, hello. It's going to go until I give it nothing. I give it nothing, enter. I give it nothing. Okay, so now what happened? If I look into hi.txt, I see just 1 and 2 and the empty line. That is great. And as well, if I gave it some sort of file to read from, such as sample1.txt of this, we already saw before, but let me make sure that this didn't break our function, sample1.txt. That runs as well. This does print it, which we don't really want to do, so I'll just fix that up. We do that, and then we check hi.txt, and it is still 1 and 2, but just to make sure that gave us the proper input and not the same as the other one, 3, and then hello. We'll change that, save that, and run it with sample1.txt. Now hi.txt is 1, 2, and 3. All right, so that's our function. I know it's pretty crazy, and there's some slight improvements that we could make to make this a little bit cleaner. For example, you could do something like this is basically the exact same code. So you notice that I copied and pasted in here. I copied and pasted down there and changed like nothing. You could very easily have created this into a function and just make that like a helper function, which helps our main function. That way we would have less lines in our actual function, which is always good. And for example, this except thing, try except, there's a little bit better of a way to do that if we're just checking this, checking whether it's an int or not, but it doesn't really matter. There's our function. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in module 4.